Good evening, ladies. It's been a good weekend, hasn't it? Lots of good fellowship, good talks, good food. And I hope we can continue with that for the next day or so. Okay, treasuring family. All of us have at least one father and one mother. Most of us probably also have some siblings. And I say one father, one mother. Maybe somebody has like a step or adoptive family also. Many of us have nieces and nephews. For myself, I come from a family of 7 children, 5 boys, 2 girls. I'm second from oldest, and then my sister is the youngest. And I also have 21 nieces and nephews and 29 great nieces and nephews. So we have some enjoyable times when we get together. Now, for some of us, family is a very positive thought, and for some of us, maybe if we think of our family, we may have some painful memories. And no family is perfect. Every family has some good points and some weaknesses, and we can all grow together. What does the Bible say about family and about parents? Well, in Exodus 20, verse 12, it says, "Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee." That's in the Old Testament. Then the New Testament is very similar. In Ephesians 6, 2 and 3, it says, "Honor thy father and thy mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth." We all want to live long and have a good life. And this is one way that God can bless us. It does not mean if somebody has a short life that they failed in this area. Doesn't mean that at all. But generally, if we follow our parents' counsel and guidance, we will be better off than if we reject that. There are blessings and challenges of family connections. We can give and receive support and encouragement to each other. And most of us pretty well know what our parents are pleased if we do something or if we don't. And even after they're gone, we know that, and we can still be honoring them. I have been involved in some mission endeavors that some people might have considered possibly unsafe. But I knew that my father, who was no longer living, he would have been 100% supportive of me being involved in the way that I was. And that made me feel good. And my mother was also supportive. My mother is here with us tonight. And I'm thankful for that, and also one of my sisters-in-law. So that's a blessing. Okay, and we can get and receive practical help from each other. Especially as single ladies, and if we live alone, sometimes we need some help. I do live alone, and I've had some challenges recently. I don't know, it was maybe a month ago or so, there was an animal had taken up residence underneath my deck in the backyard. And after a bit, I discovered it was a skunk. That was not acceptable with me. And I tried various means to get rid of the skunk. I put out poison, I plugged the hole, I set a live catch trap, and nothing worked. Until finally one of my brothers came and was able to shoot it. And then, I don't know, it was maybe a week or 2 later, there was another animal that came, and that was a groundhog. And that was also not acceptable. And so I set the live catch trap, and I caught it. Well, then what am I going to do with it? So I called one of my brothers, and I said, "What do I do with it?" He said, "Well, if you bring it over to my house, I'll shoot it." So I had cardboard in the trunk of my car, and I put the live catch trap with the groundhog in it. And I went to my brother's house, and he shot it and disposed of it. So I got some help. And then I've also had the opportunity to give help to some of my family. My brother, just younger than me, he was also always a very big help to me and encouragement, and especially after my father died, I felt like I depended on him a lot. But then he developed serious health issues, cancer, and I had the privilege of helping him and his family. So sometimes we receive help, sometimes we give help at different seasons of life. We can also get advice. Sometimes I'm not sure, should I do this or should I do that? And then I can usually find one of my brothers that I can call and ask, hey, what do you think? Should I do this? My car is making this funny sound. And so he says, okay, you go to such and such place and they'll probably fix it for you. And they did. So, and other things that are more significant than just getting cars repaired. Okay, sometimes our families, in our relations with each other, sometimes there are hurts and misunderstandings. And none of us wants to cause hurt to our family, but sometimes we say something without meaning to, or sometimes they might say something and maybe we take it the wrong way. So let's be careful that we don't cause hurts, and then let's also be careful that we don't assume that they meant something bad or something negative when maybe we took it the wrong way. And then as life goes on, our siblings may get married. And then there's changes in that respect because they they become more, things change. They have their own family and you aren't as close to them as you were beforehand perhaps. But that's okay. And now we move on to relating to parents as adults. And some of us are living at home with our parents, some of us are living away from our parents. When we live with them in their house, they make the final decisions because it's their house and they run everything. And we give suggestions and we help, but they make the decisions. And if we have our own house, our own apartment, whatever, then we make the decisions, and then also we have the responsibilities. Like if something breaks down, I got to get it fixed. I can't just assume that my mom or dad or somebody is going to take care of it. I have to get it done. In honoring our parents, we all want to honor them. And even in difficult circumstances with difficult pasts, there's usually a way that we can honor them and we can work on improving the situation and having a redemptive attitude. And let's say, okay, I'm in the same church as my mother is, in the same church that I grew up in, but probably I'm guessing that some of us are not in the same church as our parents are, perhaps. But in there, we can also honor them. Maybe their church is more conservative than yours. Like, let's say your church maybe has cameras and cell phones and theirs doesn't. when you go to their house or they come to your house, you'll want to be conscious of that and respectful of that. And then as they grow older, maybe they have some health issues, especially as they age. And I remember when I was a teenager, a lady in the community was helping care for her mother-in-law. And it wasn't always an easy situation. But she patiently, lovingly cared for her mother-in-law. She told me, I do not want to later on have regrets. And I never forgot that. And I have tried to remember that when I had the opportunity to help my single aunt and now my mother. Sometimes there may be abrupt changes in health, or they can be gradual. Perhaps somebody has a stroke and all of a sudden has significant deficits. Or it may be more gradual and they just slowly don't have quite the energy that they used to, can't do quite everything. And as they tend to age, they tend to have problems, or these are things that tend to be more difficult for them. They have bills and pills, and they may have some driving thrills. They may have issues like getting the bills paid. Maybe they write out a check and it just doesn't come out the way they wanted it to. Or they have trouble keeping track of their pills, balancing their checkbook. And maybe at first they say, hey, can you help me figure this out? My checkbook's not balancing, can you help me balance it? So we help them. And it goes on long enough, and finally we say, well, how about if I just take over your checkbook? And if the bank statement comes, I just take it and I just do it right away. And that has worked. Hopefully they're okay with that. Something that I have said is that, you have your own personal secretary. You don't have to do this anymore. Your secretary is doing it for you. And when you pay the bills, if there's checks to write out, maybe you can write out the check and then have them sign it so that they're still paying the bills, you're helping them in that way. That's something that has worked. And keeping their medications, keeping track of that. Maybe they aren't sure, did I take my pills this morning or did I not? I just can't quite remember. What should I do? Well, if you have a pill organizer, something like this, you can put the pills in for the whole week. Like here's the morning, just say noon, evening, and bedtime. And you can put them all in there. If the pills are still in here, they know they didn't take them. And if they're not in here, well, then they did take them. And you will probably want to be putting them in yourself for your parent, because it can be challenging for them to get everything in the right place. And so maybe Saturday afternoon or evening, you're going to be doing this, getting this all ready for the next week. One option. We have found that to be helpful. And their prescriptions and supplements, eventually the prescriptions need to be refilled, and the supplements, like let's say they're on multivitamins, well, once the bottle's empty, you need to get some more. And so you can help with that. Make sure that the prescriptions get refilled, and you might need to go to the pharmacy to pick them up for them. You might need to take them to doctor's appointments or go with them to hear, what does the doctor say? Does your mother or father understand what the doctor is saying? And then you can help ask questions and clarify and help in that way. Driving. Usually people want to drive as long as they possibly can, and we want them to drive as long as they can as long as it's safe for them and for the other people on the road. And sometimes it becomes rather obvious, okay, it's time to stop, and the person realizes that. Other times it's not as obvious, and maybe we aren't sure. Like, let's say maybe your parent was in the hospital for a little bit, and then as they're recovering, maybe you can take them for a test drive, and they drive and you sit beside them and you say, okay, I think you're ready. Or maybe you say, well, let's wait another week or two. And then hopefully they will agree. Now, let's talk about advance directives. And these are just legal documents that we need, our parents need. Talking about like a healthcare power of attorney, a living will, financial power of attorney. And these, a healthcare power of attorney are papers that you fill out, or your parent fills out, and they choose, if they cannot make their own decisions, they want this person that's written down here to make those decisions. And then they also choose an alternate. And then they can sign it and have it notarized, or they can sign it in the presence of two witnesses that are not named as the agents for them. And this is very important, and it's very wise for people to do this, and we single ladies also should have these. If you get hit by a drunk driver and you are unconscious, somebody has to make the decisions. And if you have chosen somebody, it will be much easier. And if your parents choose somebody, it will also be much easier. Okay? And then a living will is another document to fill out. And these can be filled out in various ways. If you make a will, or if your parents make a will, the lawyer can help with that. If you already have a will and you don't have these, you can go online here in Ohio and print out these forms and get them filled out. And then you will want to have copies of them, several copies of them that are easily accessible. Let me see, what was the other one? And as your parents age, you will also want to be talking with them if things, like let's say you have a heart attack or stroke and things are rather uncertain. Do you want us to do CPR? Do you want us to do a ventilator or not? Let's talk about this and discuss this. This is all part of giving good care to our parents and honoring their wishes. If we don't know their wishes, what are we going to do? It's far better to talk ahead of time. What do you want us to do or not do? If they want a ventilator, CPR, everything, that's fine. That's what we'll do. And you don't need to fill out any papers for that. But if they say, I don't think I want a ventilator or CPR, then you must get papers filled out. And to do that, you will go to your family doctor when your parent has an appointment, and you will say, we want to discuss code status. Those are the words to use. We want to discuss code status. And then your physician will fill out this paper and he will sign it. This is not something that you can do at home by yourself. Your physician will fill it out. And then he or she will keep a copy, and you will have copies, and copies are just as valid as the original. And then, if something happens at home and you have to rush your parent to the hospital, or you call the squad. Let's say they fall and they break their hip and they can't get up off the floor, and you call the squad. You will have this available to give to them. And while we're talking about all these forms, you'll want to keep them together in an accessible place. It's also wise to have a paper, to have a list of their medicines, all the medicines that they're on, medicines and supplements, you'll have those together. And then it's also wise to have a paper like this. This is the one that we have for my mother. It has her name, her date of birth, any allergies, her medical history, like she has some hypertension, some high blood pressure, then any surgeries that she has had done, who her primary care physician is, his phone number, her pharmacy, and then it has the power of attorney listed. And then you have this, and you have all these papers together, and you can put them in a folder, everything together, easily accessible. One good place is on top of the refrigerator, okay? If there's some emergency, you will be very glad that everything is all together. You will also have other copies of them, like maybe in a file. You'll have several copies. Your parents should have one like in her purse or in your father's wallet, any place like that. Keep it very easily accessible. And I have some copies of these up here if anybody wants to look at them afterward. Okay. Usually, people want to stay at home in their own house as long as possible, and we want to help them do that, and there are ways that we can do. Maybe they need help with grocery shopping or food preparation. Or maybe it will get to the place where you take in food and they heat it up. Or maybe you take them a plate of food that is prepared and ready to eat. They might need help with cleaning or doing laundry. Those are all things we can do to help. And as time goes on, maybe they will need like a medical alert button that they wear on a string around their neck. And if they fall and they can't get up, then they can push the button and somebody will be notified and can help them. Something else that you can do, you can have cameras in the house. For my aunt at the end, we had cameras in the kitchen, the living room, and in her bedroom. She lived alone until she died at the age of 94. And she was able to do that because of the different things that we did, like the cameras, the medical alert button, taking in food, doing cleaning and laundry. And that's what she wanted. And something else to consider, sometimes when you're helping your parents, you think, well, I think we should start doing this. And maybe that's a good thing. Stop to consider, is this something we can do long term? Once you start something, it is very hard to stop it. Like taking in food or spending the nights there or pretty well anything. Can we do this for 5 years? I talked with a lady, she had come home to another state to care for her parent, thinking it would just be probably 6 months or less. It ended up being like 5 years. So we don't know how long it's going to be, but we want to give the best care possible in a way that is sustainable. And most of us, we come from families, different sizes, And sometimes different family members have different ideas about what would be the best thing for mom or dad. And so you may need to have some family meetings with you and your parent, and it's good to have a designated decision maker, or the one who has the final say. Okay, moving on to relating well with siblings. There's many times we get together with our siblings, like family gatherings, camping trips. We tend to do sweet corn together, and I've discovered I think a lot of families do that. And it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun too. And we want to have mutually beneficial relationships. We want to benefit them, and they want to benefit us. Weddings and babies. Sometimes our siblings, they get married, and then after a while, they start having babies. And those are fun occasions, and we can help with that. And sometimes we need help, like when you get animals under your deck or other things. One single lady from another state that I talked with, she said what she does sometimes, if she needs help, she will invite her brother and family for supper, cook a meal for them, and then after supper he will do some odd jobs around the house for her. And I thought, well, that's a pretty good idea. And if we have family meetings, it's good to take notes or have somebody make notes if there's a decision. I had an uncle that died a number of years ago, an uncle by marriage, and when he died, all of a sudden there was right now a need for a caregiver for his wife because she could not stay alone. And so we had this big meeting. What should we do? Because we needed to decide a plan for right now and also a plan for long term. And so people were taking notes. And that's very good to do that. Then later you can look back and see what was discussed and what decisions were made. Especially if there are financial agreements. It's good to have everything written down. And if there is a land transfer, like if you are buying or selling land from someone in your family, have the agreement written down and notarized. There have been sad and unfortunate happenings because that was not done. And many of the bad things could have been avoided if the agreement would have been signed and notarized. There are unexpected life changes. People die unexpectedly. And again, these agreements, they should be in an accessible location. Everybody should know where they are. And then co-signing. If somebody gets or takes a loan, sometimes they're supposed to have a co-signer, like from a bank. The Bible does talk about that, not in a favorable way of co-signing. If you do it with much caution. Either if you are asking for somebody to co-sign for you, or if somebody is asking you to co-sign for them. Usually, if somebody needs a co-signer, it's because they don't have too much money. Okay, let's say I want a loan from a bank and I want to get my brother to co-sign, okay? And he does. And then let's say I lose my job and I get sick and I can't make my payments, and maybe my brother is having a little bit of a hard time, but he has to pay him because he co-signed. Pretty soon you can have bad feelings. And pretty soon you have two people with financial problems instead of just one. So be very cautious and think long and hard before you ask somebody or before you co-sign for somebody else. Navigating disagreements and difficult times. It's important to remember the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We all want to be treated kindly, respectfully, and so we want to do that for other people. And people have different perceptions and different priorities. I may perceive the situation in one way and somebody else perceives it totally differently. I remember one incident, I was present and one lady was crying. And later on, somebody else said she was just bawling. And I thought to myself, I would have said she cried quietly. So we saw the same thing, but there was two totally different, very different perceptions. And we also have different priorities. One thing may be important to me that to somebody else isn't very important. And so we need to remember that in our family. Just because it's important to me doesn't mean it is to one of my brothers or my sister. And if it's important to them, I shouldn't just totally discount it and think, oh, it's no big deal. But remember the golden rule. And it's also best to have discussions when all parties are calm. If somebody says, hey, this is how it is, this is how we're going to do it, maybe you need to stop and wait and say, hey, could we talk about this later? It's important to resolve small issues before they become large issues. Any small misunderstanding, try to clear it up so it doesn't just fester and become big. Relating with nieces and nephews. Aren't they so much fun? And you know, when your first niece or nephew was born, how special and exciting that was. And you just thought, that's the cutest baby ever. And then they grow up a bit, and then they start going to school, or they start being homeschooled, or they like learning to read, and they're so much fun. And you go to their programs, their school programs, and then they grow up some more, and they join the youth group, maybe they get married, and they start having children. Well, at any age, let's try to be involved and be interested in whatever they are interested in. One of my nieces, when she was a little girl, she colored a picture for me, and she said, put it on the fridge. I said, yes, I will put it on the fridge. That was important to her, and I wanted to do it. Another time, one of my nieces was coloring a picture. She said, hey, what color are your eyes? So I told her, and so she colored the eyes of the girl in the picture that color. That was interesting. And some of us have a few nieces or nephews, and some of us have very many. And some of them are close to us, nearby, and we can easily spend time with them and be involved with them. And others are scattered far and wide. I have a friend, she has nieces and nephews in 4 different countries, not states, but countries. So obviously, she can't really spend too much time with a lot of them. But when we have opportunity, let's take that opportunity. On their birthdays or special occasions or just because. Talk with them individually. If you know they enjoy doing something, maybe you can do that with them. My youngest niece is quite a bit younger than her next older sibling, and I was at their house and we were talking, and I said, hey, should we go out and jump on the trampoline a while? She said, yes, let's do that. So she and I went out and jumped on the trampoline a while, and we had fun. I liked it, and I think she did too. I have another niece, she enjoys fishing, and I've already taken her fishing. So whatever you can, invest in your nieces and nephews, and it will bless you and them, I believe. And I'm sure lots of you have good ideas of things that you can do with them. And even if they're at a distance, maybe you can write them letters or send cards. I have already called one of them and like saying happy birthday on the phone for them. In conclusion, let's relate in a God-honoring manner with our family members. Let us love them well, remembering the golden rule. Let's serve them and allow them to serve us.